You think the story of Vietnamese food in America begins with trendy Instagram cafes and picture-perfect food trucks? Not even close. The real beginning was much quieter. In the 1970s, thousands of Vietnamese refugees fled a collapsing Saigon. With war behind them and only memory to guide them, their kitchens were borrowed. Their tools were few, the ingredients? Mostly guesswork. But from basement stoves, shared apartments, and within communities that barely existed yet, they cooked. They cooked to survive. They cooked to remember. And they cooked to begin again. These meals weren't restaurant fare. They were invention. They were memory stitched with whatever the corner store gave them. Each one imperfect, unscripted was its own revolution. Let's rediscover 25 meals that Vietnamese refugees made when the world they knew was gone, and the future had no recipe. 1. CM Tien Tiem with spam and canned vegetables. In Vietnam, CM Tien Tiem broken rice was humble, but bursting with flavor. Grilled pork, fried egg, pickled veggies. Street food for the people. But in America 1975, street carts and grilling coals felt like fairy tales. No fish sauce on shelves. No pork skewered over fire. So what do you do when the only thing you have is memory? You improvise. They found broken rice if they were lucky else. Pounded regular grains until they cracked unevenly. Pork got subbed with spam. Fried until the edges crisped like memories of charred meat. Pickled vegetables? Gone. In came canned peas and carrots, stir-fried in soy sauce and dusted with sugar to chase the flavor that used to be dot. It wasn't the taste of Saigon. It was the taste of survival, of trying, and trying mattered. Because when your family's future is unknown and your past is fading, trying meals more than taste, it becomes sacred. 2. Pho made with bouillon cubes. Phasint just noodle soup back home. It was a ritual of timed 12-hour broths, aromatic spices, and quiet mastery. In Saigon, someone always had a pot simmering. In America, there was barely time to boil water. So you did what you could. You started with hot water. Added beef bouillon. Cubes if you could afford them, or whispered in onion powder, borrowed a cinnamon stick from a neighbor's pantry. You used dried rice noodles if someone made a trip to an Asian market, or you guessed it, spaghetti. On top, raw onions. Store-bought lemon wedges instead of lime, maybe canned bean sprouts. It wasn't pho, not technically. But when that steam hit your face, when you slurped, closed your eyes, it almost felt like home knocking gently, because flavor is memory. And broken or whole, memory is still yours. 3. Banh sandwiches. With Wonder Bread banh mi in Vietnam was a perfect blend, crispy French baguettes filled with pâté, grilled meats, pickled vegetables, herbs, and spice. A bite of balance. But in 1970s American towns without baguettes or pâté, Vietnamese families adapted in ways that didn't look elegant but tasted like effort. Wonder bread, soft, fluffy. Completely wrong. Toast it lightly, just enough crunch. Inside deli, ham, maybe leftover spam or canned Vienna sausages. Mayo replaced pâté. Iceberg lettuce took cilantro's place. Pickled veggies were sometimes just carrots and onions, soaked with sugar and vinegar in jar lids. To a child who didn't know Saigon, this was just lunch. To parents, it was memories on sliced bread. It was grief buttered with courage and served with quiet pride. When you can't bring home with you, sometimes you make it, 2 slices at a time. 4. Canned chua with canned tomatoes and hot dogs. Canned chua, the vibrantly sour soup of the Mekong Delta, typically loaded with fresh river fish, tamarind broth, and herbs that grew wild. In America, rivers didn't speak the same language. So they opened cans. Tomatoes took the place of fresh. Sugar and vinegar replaced tamarind. No elephant ear stems or sawtooth herbs, only cabbage, maybe some canned mushrooms from the church. Pantry, if that. Fresh fish turned into boiled hot dogs, sliced and dropped into the pot like they'd always belonged. Pineapple came from syrupy cans, drained carefully. It didn't look like home, didn't smell like rivers, but that first tangy spoonful opened something deeper. Older the idea that you hadn't lost everything after all. 5. Gqun with iceberg lettuce and American shrimp back home. Gqun was a dish of elegance translucent rice paper wrapping shrimp, pork, vermicelli, herbs, dipped in perfection. In America, rice paper might cost a week's wage. Herbs? Rare? Options? Few doubt, so families used what they had. Rice paper sheets were stretched. Lettuce iceberg, not mint, gave crunch. Shrimp was frozen and tasteless, but still called shrimp, vermicelli, sometimes spaghetti. Peanut butter whisked with soy sauce and sugar became peanut sauce. Rolls weren't graceful, but the act of rolling them, parents guiding children's hands, was the real magic. Gqun became an unspoken lesson. To wrap up whatever you have and make it whole again. 6. Chao ga, chicken rice porridge with instant rice and chicken backs. In Vietnam, chao ga was medicine in a bowl, slow simmered comfort, made to heal fevers, soothe hearts, and fill quiet evenings. Chicken cooked for hours, jasmine rice broken down into silk, then topped with ginger, scallions, and shallots, each crisp to perfection. But in 1970s America, jasmine rice was a luxury, whole chicken too expensive, and time? No one had extra. Hours when both parents worked double shifts. So they built warmth from scraps. Chicken backs and necks, often given away at the butcher, became the base. Boiled hard, every bit of marrow milked out. The rice? Instant. Cooked down with too much water to turn it thick. Slivers of ginger from the produce aisle if the budget allowed. Fried shallots, a memory. Still, that bowl meant something. It was warm. It was familiar. It said, "I see you." In a world of plastic forks and unfamiliar alphabets, it was proof someone cared enough to make something soft in a place that felt so hard. 7. Bun shake with ground beef and ketchup sauce. Back in Hanoi, bun shake was street royalty. Juicy. Grilled pork patties served over rice noodles with dipping sauce alive with fish sauce, lime, sugar, pickled vegetables, and fragrant herbs. But in 1970s America, charcoal grills were banned. Fish sauce was a myth, and fresh herbs didn't grow in supermarket aisles. So how do you recreate something vibrant when the world around you feels gray? Ground beef, cheaper than pork. Shaped by hand into rough patties, browned in a pan. The dipping sauce was invention ketchup mixed with vinegar, soy sauce, a little sugar-sweet, tangy. Familiar to no one, but still oddly right. Spaghetti swapped in for rice noodles. No Thai basil, just shredded lettuce from a bag. No, it wasn't. Hanoi, but it was home reassembled, bite by bite, stitched with stubborn joy. Because sometimes, the flavor isn't what you remember, it's what you refuse to forget. 8. Zai. Sticky rice with canned corn and margarine. Zai in Vietnam was celebration. Sticky rice steamed until tender, crowned with mung beans, crushed peanuts, salted coconut, or fried shallots. It was eaten with fingers, offered to ancestors, and loved by children. In American kitchens, it became a different act of love. Specialty rice was pricey. Long grain rice was everywhere. So, they made it work. More water, longer cook time. Still not quite sticky enough, so in went a spoonful of margarine, softened it, glued it together. Enriched it. Toppings came from cans, corn kernels, drained. Maybe a swirl of coconut milk if the week's budget smiled kindly. Missing mung beans. Missing peanuts. missing tools to pound or toast or grind, but fingers still scooped it the same way. Parents taught kids how to roll bites tightly in their palms. And culture, in that moment, didn't depend on the beans. It depended on remembering how to hold the bowl. 9. Shake Geo, fried spring rolls with egg roll wrappers and cabbage. Shake. Geo was party food. Wrapped tight in rice paper, filled with pork, shrimp, mushrooms, and glass noodles. Fried until the first bite shattered like glass. It meant laughter. It meant company. But the rice paper for frying? Unavailable or reserved for Lunar New Year. So refugee cooks turned to Chinese egg roll wrappers, thicker, heavier, but accessible. The filling changed too. No shrimp. Pork became beef, maybe turkey on sale, glass noodles, replaced with shredded. Cabbage and carrots, the kind you'd normally feed rabbits. They rolled, sealed with water, fried them in wide skillets with hot oil and hope. The texture turned chewy instead of crisp. But dip them in ketchup mixed with vinegar and sugar and suddenly, everyone was smiling, because the crunch didn't matter. What mattered was the smell they could recognize and the stories they told while hands folded rolls by the dozens. Even in exile, you still need something to fry golden. 10. Curry ga. Chicken curry with store-bought curry powder and russet potatoes. Vietnamese curry isn't Indian. It isn't Thai. It's gentler lemongrass, coconut milk, soft chicken. Thighs, sweet potatoes, carrots. Served with crusty bread or plain rice, it was quiet and fragrant. Comfort with color, but in America's fluorescent grocery aisles, lemongrass didn't grow. Coconut milk was exotic, expensive, maybe a rumor. So what did they do? They reached for McCormick curry powder, a yellow substitute with just enough promise. Chicken thighs or drumsticks, browned and simmered with russet potatoes, starchy stand-ins for sweet ones. Evaporated milk turned into coconut if you imagined hard enough. Carrots, onions, canned broth if it needed extending. As it bubbled. The scent wasn't quite right, but it was rich. It said to hungry children, dinner's coming. In homes where nothing tasted familiar, curry still smelled like hope. Even without the right ingredients, love still made it taste like home, just in a slightly different language. 11. Phout Co. Braised pork with canned pineapple and Coke. In southern Vietnam, Phout Co. was sacred. Pork belly browned with sugar, slow simmered in coconut water and fish sauce, served deep and richly sweet on Tet and lazy Sundays. It was the kind of dish where Grandma knew just how dark to take the caramel. In 1970s America, coconut water didn't come in stores. Fish sauce, if it existed at all, was hidden on a dusty shelf 3 cities away. Clay pots were left behind, along with photo albums and family heirlooms. So they improvised. Pork shoulder, cheap and fatty, browned with white sugar until the pan. Smoked. Soy sauce stood in for fish sauce, not exact, but it gave depth. Then came the twist. Canned pineapple juice and Coke. The soda, bubbly and sweet, mimicked coconut's richness and helped glaze the sauce into something glossy and dark. No, it wasn't Grandma's Thoutcade, but neighbors still knocked to ask, what smelled so good? The answer? Something homesick, something fighting not to vanish. Something proud. 12. Bo lus ki sing beef with stewed cuts and A1. Sauce in Vietnam, bo lesi was elegance with edge. Cubes of seared beef tossed in a hot wok, kissed with garlic, soy sauce, black pepper. Served over watercress with lime and dipping salt. In 1970s America, watercress was unheard of. Beef tenderloin? Too expensive even to look at. But families still wanted to celebrate, to eat something that didn't feel like survival, even if the effort said otherwise. They used stew meat, cubed and pounded tender with a can. No wok, only an electric stove and a worn pan. soy sauce and garlic. Powder brought back some of that rich flavor. No lime for dipping. Instead, a bottle of A1, sauce on the side, lettuce replaced watercress. The beef was chewier, the marinade milder. Still, when it hit the table and the sizzle whispered memory, people smiled like it was a feast, because it was. Not because of the beef, but because you'd made something shaken free from scarcity. 13. Che, sweet soup with fruit cocktail and jello. Che was warmth in glass bowls on hot nights. In Vietnam, it was mung beans, palm sugar, tapioca, sticky rice, tropical fruit swimming in coconut milk. Every spoonful a celebration of color, texture, joy. In 1970s America, tropical fruit didn't grow in suburban lawns. Tapioca pearls didn't sit on supermarket shelves. So refugees pieced Che together from cans and imagination. Fruit cocktail from a tin served as the base, peaches, grapes, and strange artificial cherries. Flavored cubes of lime or strawberry jello added color. Coconut milk was rare. Evaporated. Milk filled in. Condensed milk if there was extra money left. Was it the Che that soothed Saigon summers? Not quite, but it was cold, sweet, and shared. And in apartments with no air conditioning and too many people starting over, sometimes joy from a can was enough to bring the heat down. 14. Siam chien, fried rice with frozen mixed veggies. And butter in Vietnamese kitchens, siam chien wasn't an afterthought. It was a craft. Day-old jasmine rice in a hot wok, eggs tossed in, Chinese sausage crisped at the edges, dried shrimp for depth, fried shallots falling like confetti. 1970s. America had microwaves, not woks. No sausage, no shallots, no dried shrimp. But what they did have was rice too fresh because it had to be. Leftovers were a luxury. So they used it anyway. Butter, not oil, melted in the pan. A bag of frozen vegetables, peas, carrots, corn thrown in straight from the freezer. Maybe an egg scrambled if they got extra from the food pantry. Soy sauce stirred it all brown and shiny. There were no crunchy bits. No fire. But it was warm, filling. Parents watched kids clean their bowls and felt the quiet triumph of knowing no one would go to bed hungry that night. 15. Bun Ryu, crab tomato noodle soup with canned crab and tomato paste in the Mekong Delta. Bun Ryu was battle and beauty. Crab pounded into paste with rice paddles, blended with tomatoes and eggs, simmered into a reddish broth fragranced with funk and spice, topped with herbs, tofu, and vermicelli. In this new world, there was no mortar to pound crab. No live crabs to begin with. But hunger remembered what bun ryu tasted like, and resourcefulness made it reappear. They used canned crab meat, grayish and brine mixed with tomato paste, eggs, and a little broth. Dropped into boiling water, the mixture curled into soft crab curds, tofu if they found it, noodles if they could afford them, spaghetti if not. No fermented shrimp paste, no tamarind. But the broth was red and tangy. The steam rose. For one fleeting moment, a spoonful unlocked the smell of a place they left behind. Almost. But sometimes almost is enough. 16. Namanchang. Grilled pork sausages with breakfast links in the oven. Namanchang was street-side magic. Ground pork seasoned with garlic, sugar, and fish sauce, rolled into sausage, grilled on charcoal, eaten with rice paper, herbs, vermicelli, and dipping sauce. A flavor bomb wrapped in joy. In 1970s America, there were no charcoal. Fires on apartment balconies. No fish sauce for seasoning. Rice paper? Maybe in a specialty store, an hour's drive away, and a luxury when rent was due. So you made something else become nem and chang. Breakfast sausage links. Jimmy Dean or the store brand seasoned again, with garlic powder and a spoon of sugar. Laid on a baking sheet and roasted in the oven. No skewers, no smoke. But still, when you slice them onto a plate with lettuce or noodles, they looked like they might belong. Dipping sauce? Homemade from ketchup, vinegar, peanut butter, stirred into something surprisingly close. No, it wasn't the nem enchang from crowded food stalls in Nha Trang, but it was clever, proud, and full of fight. Celebration, rebuilt with grocery. 17. Ga Jiang, ginger braised chicken with powdered ginger and 7 UP back home. Ga Jiang was soul food. Chicken cooked with fresh ginger, caramel sauce, and fish sauce until the aroma filled every room and the sauce clung to the bones. It was healing. It was warmth. It was home on a rainy day, but powdered ginger was all the spice. Rack offered in 1970s suburban supermarkets. Fresh ginger was pricey, not worth skipping a meal over. Fish sauce? Still missing from most shelves. So kitchens pivoted. Chicken drumsticks browned in a pan with soy sauce. Powdered ginger dusted heavily until fragrant. And for the signature, sweetness? 7-Up. The soda gave it shine, sugar, a gentle fizz, and somehow depth. It bubbled into a syrupy glaze, sticking to the meat like memory. The smell was new. The taste familiar but translated. When poured over rice, it sang in a different accent, but with the same heart. That's what love does when it crosses oceans. It adapts. It still comforts. 18. Ban Zio, sizzling crepes with pancake. Mix and turmeric in the markets of Vietnam. Ban Zio caught your ear before your eye. That sizzle in the pan, rice flour, coconut milk, turmeric turning golden, crisp, and lace-thin. Folded with shrimp, pork, bean sprouts, then wrapped in lettuce and herbs. Joyfully messy. Always shared. America, however, offered no rice flour. And no coconut milk at local stores. Bean sprouts confused grocers. So families got inventive. Aunt Jemima or biscuit pancake mix formed the base, thinned with water and turmeric for color. Shrimp came from cans. Ground beef replaced pork. Cabbage stood in for bean sprouts. Fried in a skillet, no sizzling wok but enough crackle to bring people running. Served with iceberg lettuce instead of mustard greens. Dipped in a sauce of soy sauce, vinegar, and sugar. Maybe nothing like real Ban Zio, but it still popped when it hit the heat. And from the moment it sizzled, from the way kids watched in awe, it didn't feel like losing tradition. It felt like reviving it. 19. Can Bai Ji, pumpkin soup with canned pumpkin and bouillon cubes. Can Bai Ji wasn't flashy, just comfort. Chunks of warm pumpkin swimming in clear broth with shrimp or pork ribs, maybe scallions, pho, little pepper. Thick soups for weekday dinners and colder months. But in 1970s America, fresh pumpkin wasn't just rare. It was misunderstood, sold in fall, meant for carving, not soup. So families reached for cans. Libby's pumpkin puree, where pie recipes lived on the label, made its way into pots. They added water and bouillon cubes, chicken or beef, whatever was on hand. No ribs, sometimes no meat at all. Diced potatoes or carrots stretched the bowl. A dash of black pepper brought balance. The result was different, almost a stew. The texture richer, thicker, sweeter than it should have been. But spooned over rice and shared at the end of a long day, it somehow still felt the same. Still offered comfort. Soup doesn't need a passport. Just a simmer and a little love. 20. Mi Ji Zhou. Stir-fried noodles with ramen and frozen veggies in. Vietnam, Mi Zhou was theater. Egg noodles, wok tossed with pork, shrimp, and leafy greens. Flavored by flame. Smoky with char. Fast, loud, and satisfying. In shared American apartments without high heat or fresh bok choy, it became school night. Quick. Ramen noodles replaced egg noodles, cheap, easy, everywhere. Boiled, rinsed, dropped into a skillet with oil. Vegetables came frozen straight from the bag. Stir-fry mix. Carrots, snap peas, water chestnuts, broccoli. It did the job. Proteins were whatever was left from another meal, scraps of chicken, ground beef, odds and ends. Soy sauce finished the flavor. No oyster sauce, no wok, the breath of the wok. And yet, when plated, the noodles glistened. The pan sizzled. The kitchen smelled alive. To the kids, it was dinner. Hot and fast, filling. But to parents, it was more. A little bowl of resourcefulness built from nothing, flavored like resilience. 21. Ban Ba. Steamed rice cakes with tapioca pudding mix and food coloring. In Vietnam, Ban Bo were pastel jewels. Airy rice cakes with a honeycomb center, steamed in tiny cups, tasting of coconut and nostalgia. Kids love them. Grandmothers made them in silence and pride. They symbolized softness in a hard world. But in 1970s America, rice flour was rare. Coconut milk, even rarer. No steamer in sight. Just memories of color and sweetness. Families found a workaround. Supermarket tapioca pudding mix stood in for coconut sweetened batter. Mixed with milk, a dash of sugar, and drops of food coloring, pink or green, like the ones back home. Poured into muffin tins, covered in pots, steamed with lids that didn't quite fit. The result wasn't cake, not really. More gooey than fluffy, but the colors were right. The smell was close. And when a mother handed one to her child and said, "This is what we used to eat," the thread between generations tightened. Tradition didn't vanish, it adapted. Even when it tasted like translation. 22. K-Ko-T, caramelized fish. With canned mackerel and Pepsi in southern kitchens, K-Ko-T was love made salty sweet. Catfish braised in clay pots with sugar browned until smoking, fish sauce, black pepper, and coconut water. It was best served with loads of rice to catch every last drop. In America, there were no clay pots. Markets didn't sell fresh catfish. Coconut water, unheard of. So families flipped the script. Canned mackerel, drained and rinsed of its tomato sauce or oil, was seared in a pan. A sauce followed soy in place of fish sauce, sugar stirred in, pepper cracked generously. And for the signature thick glaze? Pepsi. Yes, Pepsi. A splash of soda gave the sweetness, the color, and the magic. It caramelized, bubbled, caught the edges of the fish until sticky and rich. Not quite what Grandpa made. But when served over hot rice and everyone went silent mid-bite, you knew. Chiku, clear noodle soup with angel hair pasta and chicken broth in Vietnam. Tiku was delicate. A southern dish with a light pork seafood broth, chewy tapioca noodles topped with shrimp, pork, quail eggs, and fresh greens. Brighter than pho, just as dreamy. But in America, tapioca noodles were mythical. Pork bones cost too much. Quail eggs were nowhere. So they shifted ingredients, not intentions. Store-bought chicken broth warmed the pot. Added sugar and soy sauce brought back some depth. Angel hair pasta stood in for noodles thin, soft, a close enough echo. Toppings were canned shrimp, sliced. Deli ham, hard-boiled eggs, and lettuce shreds in place of herbs. No lime wedges. No fried shallots. No smell of herbal steam drifting through alleyways, but it was served hot. And when shared by a family speaking Vietnamese in a country that didn't recognize the language, even a simple bowl of broth could feel like refuge. Sin Chang, grilled. Pork ribs with oven-baked spare ribs and Italian dressing. Sin Chang wasn't just dinner, it was the crown jewel of backyard grilling. Pork ribs marinated with fish sauce, honey, 5-spice, and lemongrass. Then grilled low and smoky over open flame. Served atop broken rice with tangy vegetables. But in 1970s apartment complexes, fire was forbidden. Lemongrass didn't grow in supermarkets. Fish sauce hid in the shadows or wasn't there at all. So they did the unthinkable. They used Italian salad dressing, store-bought, tangy, herbal, oily. Mixed with soy sauce and a spoonful of sugar, it became the marinade. Ribs baked in ovens until their edges began to darken and crisp. No smoke, no lemongrass perfume. But the meat turned tender and sweet. Served over rice with shredded lettuce and pickled onions, it carried its own new version of celebration, a reconstructed feast that still fed joy to everyone at the table. 25. Shake Law, Vietnamese pork roll with spam and plastic wrap. Soft, silken, and savory, shake lo is a staple at every family table. Pork pounded until smooth, wrapped tight in banana leaves, steamed into a perfect roll. It appeared in sandwiches, spring rolls, or sliced thin beside soy sauce and rice. But in 1970s America, there were no banana leaves. The pounding tools lived in another country, and pork paste didn't come ready-made. So they started with spam. Mashed with a fork. Mixed with egg, garlic powder, black pepper. Shaped into logs. Wrapped tightly in plastic wrap, sometimes reinforced with foil. Then steamed over boiling water carefully, patiently. The result? Denser, saltier, not quite as fragrant. But sliced thin and placed on rice, dipped in soy sauce, it passed as comfort. It passed as heritage. It passed from one plate to another, a quiet reminder that even when everything changes, the deep flavors of identity can still survive. So were these 25 meals really cooked by Vietnamese refugees in 1970s America? Yes, every single one. Not from cookbooks or restaurants, but from instinct, memory, and need. When they arrived with nothing but clothes on their backs and family recipes carved into mind and muscle, they didn't stop cooking. They adapted. They stretched ingredients. They turned hot dogs into soul food, Wonder Bread into banh mi, Pepsi into caramel. These weren't meals of perfection, they were meals of persistence. Each plate was a refusal to forget, a quiet act of defiance, a whisper that said, "We are still here, no matter the spice shelf or language barrier." Mothers taught daughters with rice paper and spaghetti. Fathers fed sons with ketchup-fried rice. And in kitchens across America, something was preserved, not just food, but heritage. Some of those dishes sound strange. Some sound brilliant. Some you might even want to taste right now. But what matters most is that they survived. The recipes evolved. But the spirit, the memory, the love, that stayed the same. And every time you eat pho or banh mi today, you're tasting legacy built one meal at a time, in places where survival was the only ingredient guaranteed. If this moved you, hit that like button. And tell me in the comments, which dish would you try and which one reminded you of your own family's way of adapting? Then go ahead and subscribe, because there's another forgotten chapter of food history waiting right around the corner.